And recording is on. Oh, look at that beautiful sound wave. It's so pretty.
Today, Aradia has a whole new audio recording, blockchain, recording chain. So everything, your microphone's still the same, right?
Yes. So basically what happened is my stepdad is storing some of his very nice music gear in my signal chain. So I now have like an analog compressor and preamp. So my microphone, which is notorious for being weak and having an anemic signal, now is getting a much more robust signal into the computer just because of this gear before any software touches it. So between that and a bunch of acoustic adjustments that he walked me through, I have a way better sound wave right out of the gate at this point.
And so hopefully, let us know if you hear any differences, but hopefully we get just like super clear sound.
Oh, Super Skylick, thank you. I definitely do want to sound like NPR. It's not a secret. And Inara saying I sound lush. Excellent.
Yeah, I try and do some of that balance in post, but it's not always perfect. When you're starting with an anemic signal, you do the best you can, but sometimes there's just parts of it that just, there's not enough audio there to begin with to amplify. So I'm really, really excited about having both of us on better quality mics.
Yeah. Oh, TC Traveler says it sounds lovely. Oh, thank you so much, you guys. I'm really, really excited for this upgrade. And yeah, hopefully he doesn't want this gear back anytime soon.
Yeah, I think I already had her drop her gain down a little bit, and I think it could drop just a slight bit more, just if you want to. But again, guys, the other thing that's going on here is you're hearing her audio through Zoom. Right, and Zoom is doing its own post-processing, so it will sound a little bit different to the audio recording than it does to the live recording people here. So it's, what you're hearing live is actually not going to sound exactly like what's in the post-processing, but hopefully there's a better signal for both places.
Yeah. Okay, well, Alicia says that it sounds better and we'll continue to get feedback, so thank you very much, because, yeah, this is the first time I'm taking it for a real spin since massively tearing my entire office apart in the name of new equipment yesterday. And I do have a light. I did get the light.
You know what you need? You need like something next to your desk that's freestanding to clamp things to. So you can clamp the boom mic arm to it and the light and everything else. And that will isolate your arm from like any sort of noises if you hit the desk or anything like that.
Right. Well, the light needs to be like in front of me, right? And then the mic, I guess the mic can be in front of me. Yeah, my furniture setup is not ideal for what I need. So I gotta jury rig something somehow.
No, it's funny when you start thinking about recording, you realize like what you really want is a desk in the middle of a big room that you can put things around. Like putting your desk next to a wall kind of sucks because you want a background with like a green screen and you want lights in front of you, so you need stuff around the desk. And then all of a sudden I'm going like, oh, I get why movies have studios.
Yeah.
Just get your warder to hold the mic stand next to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just have him be, the lamp. He could be my sexy lamp. Literally.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Editing Seth here. Just a quick note. We talked about sound quality, but there's some pounding on my track during this one. Those are children's feet as they run over my head. Sorry, not a lot I can do about that, but if you do hear a mysterious pounding during this podcast, that's probably what it is. So, sorry about that.
Questions and an oath. This is a spicy chapter.
This is definitely a spicy chapter.
Yeah, I am ready. And I was thinking I should probably do the read-in because it's a female POV and there's a bunch of names that you will butcher.
Good. I'm glad you're just making that decision for me. Thank you.
It was in an episode like just a couple of times back that I edited where you were like, why do I do all the read-ins? Why don't you do more? And I'm like, because I'm not taking them from you. So this is me acting on that follow through. This is a fun chapter.
This is a fun chapter. This is one of those chapters that I actually remember a lot. Like this one made an impression on me. I think just how much they treat Galina poorly.
Yeah, I've been binging Behind the Bastards, and I was reminded of multiple historical bastards who were absolutely terrible people reading through this. Different ones from different times in what happens to Galina. It's, she's a bad person, but this is not good.
I also really think this chapter is to contrast. Remember how the girls were like, well,
yep, I was thinking about that too.
We don't have to torture somebody. We shouldn't do it. Like, this is very much, well, we could dig into it with these wise ones when we start the read-in, but they're torturing without any experience.
And it goes badly.
And it goes badly. And our Supergirls decided not to do that because they're smarter.
I noticed that parallel as well. I enjoyed it very much. Chapter 11. Questions and an oath. And our symbol is the Aiel spears and buckler. The air in the huge stable smelled of old hay and horse dung, and blood, and burned flesh. With all the doors closed, the air felt thick. 2 lanterns gave little light. Shadows filled most of the interior. In the long rows of stalls, horses whickered nervously. The man hanging by his wrists from a roof beam gave a low moan, then a ragged cough. His head fell down on his chest. He was a tall man, well-muscled, if rather the worse for wear. Abruptly, Sevanna realized that his chest no longer moved. The gem-studded rings on her fingers glittered red and green as she gestured curtly to Rial. The flame-haired woman pushed the man's head up and thumbed back one eyelid, then pressed an ear to his chest, careless of the still smoldering splinters that peppered him. With a sound of disgust, she straightened. He is dead. We should have left this to the maidens, Sevanna, or the Black Eyes. I do not doubt we killed him by ignorance. Savanna's mouth tightened, and she shifted her shawl in a clatter of bracelets. They ran nearly to her elbows, a noticeable weight in gold and ivory and gems, yet she would have worn every one she owned if she could. None of the other women said anything. Putting prisoners to the question was not the work of wise ones, but Rial knew why they had to do this themselves. The lone survivor of 10 mounted men who thought they could defeat 20 maidens because they rode horses, the man had also been the first Shanshan captured in the 10 days since their arrival in this land. He would have lived if he had not fought the pain so hard, Rial, Somarin said finally, shaking her head. A strong man for a wetlander, but he could not accept pain. Still, he told us much.
So we have the Shanshan and the Shaido coming together. Couldn't happen to a better couple. Really, like... And of course, I do like the standard dig at horsemen that like they think they can defeat any force just because they're on horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
even in the Shanshan, horsemen are the same.
Doesn't matter what army you're in. Like they're just they think they're the hot shit.
But this guy, they've clearly tortured him to death. They don't know what they're doing. They're doing it out in the middle of a stable in the middle of nowhere. I mean, of course you put a stable out in the middle of nowhere because, like, you need the horses, need room to run. I didn't really understand why it's so significant that this is in the middle of nowhere.
I think it's just, like it's for good pasture. It's to be able to just, have them be away from, I don't know. I'm assuming that someone who's more into horses could elucidate us on why this is a good idea, but I'm guessing that it's like a place where like fancy horses go to have fancy horse pasture and like, marble stalls, like that picture I've used for my background a couple of times. It's that was my best guess. And
so where are they? They are. I'm trying to locate them in the world.
I wasn't sure, but they are west of Ghealdan, or in the west of Ghealdan, because they choose to head east, and the next we see them, they're kidnapping Fail.
That makes sense. Okay. So, but they're basically up against the mountains that are on the border of Ghealdan, you think?
Yeah, the mountains are kind of to the north of them, according to the direction that Therava wants to go. And Bambi in chat is saying that Ghealdan is the correct answer according to the Tarvalin library. So they're south of the mountains and west of Perrin in Ghealdan.
That makes sense. And this is just sort of some lord's manor in a sort of minor,
just some
village,
some rural estate that they just swarmed over and took over and took everyone and took all the stuff and are now using the buildings like Vikings running around in old Roman ruins or something like that, or in an English monastery.
Isn't this basically the era that Grendal's hanging out in?
She's in Era Doman,
but like in that same sort of like geographical area where they sort of come together.
Let me go to my map up here. Yeah. I mean, like the other side of the mountains, maybe, but like, yeah, same basic part of the world.
There's sort of just this lawless center, right? That it's too far away from Andor and too far away from the coast, and there's these mountains that sort of separate everybody from everything else, and there's just this lawless center where I think some of our bad guys are like, ooh, this is... And it's protected, right? And traditionally, you have to get through everywhere else. That's why it's such these green, fat lands. Because, like, you got to go through the borderlands, or the Aiel didn't get all the way there in the Aiel War. Shan obviously are only starting to get there. So, yeah, it's been very protected from all sides.
Yeah, the chat is disagreeing that she's farther northwest than that. But still, the same... Your argument applies. Might be not just the other side of the mountains. It might be more northwest than that, but still. Yeah, it's the central place.
It's basically Nebraska.
And it's all corn-fed.
Yep. Which is why when she sees snowflakes at the end, she's like, oh, those couldn't hurt a flea. Imagine someone in Nebraska saying that the first time a snowflake falls.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Not
gonna go well.
Nope. I have never spent a winter in the Midwest, but I did read Little House on the Prairie, and my mom spent some of her childhood in the Midwest, and I know it is not to be fucked with.
My favorite story about being in the Midwest is that on my move to Portland, and I don't know if I've told this story before, but I drove through Nebraska and stopped at a campsite, and it was sort of early spring, late winter, super late winter, right? But like really early spring. And, so I set up my camp on the campsite. And it was a beautiful night, like gorgeous sunset. The air was still 65, 70 degrees. Can't wait to go camping. Camped on a slope next to the lake. Beautiful night. So, and I'm camping to save money, right? So I don't have to go in a hotel. So I set up my sleeping bag. I actually have like a mattress, like a piece of memory foam that I'm putting down on the bottom of the tent. I'm glamping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Got a bunch of shit in the tent, like a lot of heavy shit in the tent. And so about, I'd say 3 a.m., the wind starts to blow in. And we get one of these squalls that they described in the previous, like just the wind starts blowing, and within 5 minutes, it went from completely still air to literally rolling me inside my tent with everything in it down the hill.
Wow.
So I scramble out. I get out of the tent. And I'm not wearing anything. So I'm in, like, the temperatures drop to maybe 50 degrees. So, and the wind and the air, the water's coming in sideways, and the wind picks up the tent. And so I grab onto it, and it is literally over my head like a kite. And I'm using all my strength to keep my tent, my keys, my wallet, my mattress, my clothes.
Like your entire worldly possessions.
My entire life of possessions are in this thing, and I'm on a slope headed downhill into a man-made lake.
Jesus.
And so what I'm able to do is I hauled the thing up the hill. And I wondered why I was the only person camping that night. Now I know. And there was one of those concrete shelter bathrooms. And so I just hauled everything inside of there and was able to break it down, stuffed everything in the back of my car soaking wet, and then drove to a hotel.
You're like, fuck this.
Yeah. And walked into the lobby at 3 a.m. and they were like, so... And I was like, I was trying to camp.
They're like, not from around these parts, are you?
No. And I was like, no, I am not. So I just ended up hanging everything up in the room from, wall to wall and turn the heaters on blast. And that was the only night that I slept in a hotel on my trip across the country. The other nights I camped.
That's intense.
Yeah. And that ruined the mattress foam thing that was in the bottom of it too. So and a few other things I just had to get tossed So yeah, storms in Nebraska, no joke. And the thing is, half an hour later it was gone, right? It was back to still beautiful weather. It came through, it was just a front. And yeah, if my stuff had survived it, I could have gone back out there, but there was just no way.
Yeah, a bubble of evil, except that it's perfectly predictable and normal.
Listening to the wind. Remember, the wind listens to you. Oh. They're torturing Shan Chan. Do you have anything in particular to say about any of these wise ones that Sevanna is talking to? Anything that sticks out as a group?
There's just a lot of pettiness. And the thing that really struck me going through all of this was how both small-minded and petty Sevanna is, but also incredibly manipulative, and her paranoia and the fact that her brain is on overdrive, but playing these really petty political games with the wise ones. And they're all not quite on her level for being super manipulative, but they're all trying. And so just the whole thing is very petty, and there's infighting and there's competition and gaudiness and ostentatiousness, and there's all this weird flexing. Like, that's what I'm getting from it. But she reminds me of like many different dictators that I've been binge listening to on other podcasts. Like, she's a really scary person.
She really she forces people to compete for her favor rather than for what's best for the clan. And it's really not okay. And yeah, like Lillian's saying, she's very much like Elida, but somehow more effective. And I think that has to do with the fact that Giotto is less entirely constructed by Ishamael and the Black Aja, whereas the White Tower is, riddled with Black Aja. Well, I would say also Elida actively has Black Aja undermining her, right? Repeated, like all the things that she's forced to do by her keeper.
Right, whereas Therava is an honest competitor for honest political power. Like, Therava's a horrible, terrible person, but she's not Black Aja. We never get any idea that she's, a dark friend. That's not her gig.
She believes in tradition, right? Like, the rule of the stick and going back to the old ways, and she doesn't like any of this newfangled stuff that's going on. No,
she's a hardline conservative kind of person, I think, and also kind of definitely a super sadist. She reminds me a lot of Semirhage. There's stuff about her that is very Semirhage-y.
See, whereas I would say I don't think she enjoys the pain. I think for her, it's just the most effective way to control somebody. I think she enjoys
the control.
Yes.
She does not derive sensual pleasure from causing people pain, but her desire to control people through pain, to have them flinch when she walks into a room without any one power being applied at all, I think that's the same. So yeah, the fact that Therava is the person who's best at competing with Sevanna is really scary, right? This is like a dynamic duo of like a dictator and a sadist, just sort of narcissistically leading a cult of people over a cliff. It's really, really frightening. The more I learn about world history, the more I see parallels in them and in the ineffectiveness of their followers to do anything about it in themselves or as a group.
And denying facts, right? All he told us was wild tales, Arthur Hawkwing, bah. Right? Like, the whole thing in here where they don't believe any of the information that's being said to them because it doesn't fit in their worldview. And so there's that as well. Like, their worldview is shaped by whatever is best for Sevanna, and they have to conform to that because she is that dictator has total control.
Yeah. It gets really problematic really fast. And then, so that's pretty much what I noticed about them per se. And then the other important thing, timeline wise, aside from their location, is that they have not yet joined up with the rest of the Shaido. That's the other detail that's important for locating this particular chapter in the overall timeline, is that she is only with the Jumai. They have not yet met up with any of the other clans yet. And that is an issue.
Do we know how many of the other clans they end up recruiting by the time Perrin encounters them? Because it's a decent... They end up staying in one spot. Isn't that why they're in Malden? Is because that's sort of their central hub to collect all the various clans that that are coming to them over time?
I think that they've managed to collect pretty much everyone by the time they get to Malden, I think. But they need to hole up for the winter, so they take the town. I think that's the order. And I remember that scene when they come back and show Perrin, all the arrows to say we found them. It's half Shaido and half everybody else. So that gives you a rough sense of how few people is with Sevanna right now. If she only has the Jumai who end up vanishing into that everybody else category. Oh, wait, what am I talking about? Jumai is a Shaido clan. Jesus. Yeah. So she's only with her sept. Sept, that's the word for it.
Gotcha. Okay. So she's with a subset of the Shaido people.
Yeah, she's with her sept.
Yeah, and very few. There are some brotherless there with them,
yes, though. They have some brotherless, but they have not yet joined up with the other septs. And that's a huge part of why her power over the other wise ones is weakening, is because their septs aren't there, and they're much less inclined to fight for her sept alone, whereas they will fight for the Shaido if there are multiple septs.
Gotcha. Yeah, you have your sept around you, Sevanna, but where's my sept? Your wetlander friend, Kadar, and his tame Aes Sedai sent us through his holes in the air to die. Where are the rest of the Shaido? And that's undercutting a lot of her power,
so much.
Right, at this point. And as she's sort of thinking about, like, how do I control these people? She's been bludgeoning them, and she uses tries a bunch of different spurs to get these women to follow her again. She calls back to all the same, basically race baiting. That's not the right way to say it, but like,
kind of. It's very colonialism. It's got a lot of Manifest Destiny sort of vibes.
but also, it's like, I know he was lying, but I had to take the risk, because otherwise we would have just been hunted by
that plan.
More powerful.
Yeah, the whole, I meant to do that. Yeah, that's not Manifest Destiny. That's a little bit later. This is her, like, cat falling off a shelf and then being like, yeah, I meant to do that.
That's definitely a lot of that. But that's, again, another aspect of dictators, is like, things can't go wrong. That's just how they meant to do them the whole time, right? Like, something I hate to say his name, but something we bring up a lot I saw with Trump is, like, he'd never correct himself when he made a verbal mistake. He'd always say blah and blah. He'd never say, oh, I made a mistake. You can't admit mistakes. And that's sort of where Sevanna is, because any mistake would undermine her authority.
And that's why you know that we have a cool cult, because we will correct ourselves.
Oh, I just edited the podcast to make it sound like we never make a mistake in the first place.
Oh, was I supposed to be doing that?
Yes. Isn't that the point of editing?
This interesting line where she thinks repeatedly about the killing of Dysane and one power as a weapon and all this stuff with the wise ones. But there's this line here that she could not channel herself seldom occurred to her now. Soon that lack would be remedied. Is she talking about Galina and the Oath Rod? Or the wise ones in the Oath Rod? Is this an Oath Rod inspired?
Yes.
Okay.
Because she said repeatedly, like, what I want is an Aes Sedai under my complete, absolute control, broken to do whatever I say, so that way I don't have to rely on my equals. I don't have to convince another wise one to channel for me. I just want a Ghealdan. Because remember, she said that's why she put Galina in black. She wanted her broken. And whereas Therava just wanted her in white as a servant. Right.
Therava wants to break her through more conventional means.
Am I reversing those two?
No, you got it right. Sevanna wanted her in black, and well, shit, now you've got me questioning. And this is Sevanna having the Oath Rod. She's like, now I can get her back into Ghealdan status where I can use her properly.
Gotcha. And make sure that she's broken. Yeah, because Therava was like, no, I want to break her. And that's what Therava, she's like, screw the Oath Rod. I just want to break her. Like, I'll make her crawl no matter what, Oath Rod or not.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's what works, because she keeps fighting against the Oath Rod until she's finally given to Therava. And that's what breaks her in the end. Even though the Oath Rod's still in place, that's the tool, but it really is Therava's cruelty that finally breaks her mind.
Yeah, and she really, when she gets retaken by Therava at the end, she breaks when she hears Therava's voice, not when Therava changes what the oaths are. Like, that's telling.
I love here Sevanna, she's alone with these women, and all she can think about is how they killed Dysane. And I'm just like...
Yeah, she keeps thinking about how they killed Dysane.
Yeah, you created those monsters, and now you're alone with them in the room. That's your fault.
That sounds like you kind of brought it on yourself.
A little bit.
But she's such a fucking, like, I hesitate to say badass because I usually reserve that for good people, but she is such a badass that she's able to just turn her back on them and walk away and not look over her shoulder. And I'm like, her iron will is not to be questioned. Like, she is insanely brave and charismatic and strong. I mean, she's a good cult leader dictator. She's very good at her job, if that is her job, which she clearly thinks it is. It's really scary that Galina wonders at it constantly throughout her whole POV. Like, where does she get the nerve as a non-channeler? And it's like, something's broken in her brain. She has no risk assessment issues with Aes Sedai. Or with channelers. She just takes them on. And it's wild to watch.
We get a bit of interaction with the leader of the Shaido Maidens,
Ifalin.
Ifalin. Again, I wish there was more about her. I don't see any mentions of her after this book.
She shows up a couple of times, I think, just with respect to Sevanna, maybe? No?
No, not. Again, she's in this chapter and then mentioned again in chapter 30 in the party. But that's
wow.
it. And she's never mentioned again. So
wow. That's a bummer because she's set up to be a really interesting, like, you know, 5th tier character or whatever, and then nothing happens.
Sort of the opposite of Sulin.
Yeah. Yeah, she could have been another Sulin, and instead she just fades into obscurity, which I guess is appropriate for Shaido.
But I would have loved to have seen a little more. I like the way he uses this chapter to show a contrast between our Supergirls who avoid the torture and let Adelitas and Vandine handle that, and this shit show of a torturing scene. Like, show that contrast. Show what the corruption of the Shaido has done that leads to their demise by showing a contrast with what our characters are doing. Where we see Sulin become a maid because she shamed Guy Shine, show Eilfin shaming Guy Shine and being like, whatever, and have the Guy Shine rise up against her, or something like that. Like, have her interact with Fail in the camps. Do something with her, right? Like,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Anyway, there's my rant about that.
But yeah, I mean, it's an
interesting character that I wanted more
I'm completely nodding. What the line here is, she knew where the power lay and went to keep her mouth closed. And it's like, those two things make excellent followers for people who commit atrocious acts. Like, this is the corruption.
I was just doing my job.
Exactly. It's the corruption of the Shaido manifesting through all the ranks. And they don't want to make you learn all the Shaido, so they give us a Fallon to kind of be like, the rank and file are just as corrupt and hollowed out as the wise ones.
And how that does come down from leadership. Leaders do really set the tone for the rest of the group, right? That's what's happening. Yeah,
it's sad.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that. I mean, clearly the Shaido had a different culture before.
Oh yeah,
right. We saw that with Madrick and Ghealdan and all the
and the
Sevanna
reputation of the Shaido going back like however long. The fact that they're one of the biggest clans, like
But at the same time, you have the Congers and the Coplans who are on a similar sort of description, and I wouldn't consider them evil. They're sort of just annoying.
Well, they don't have leadership power though. Like the Congers and Coplans are a piece of the Two Rivers who has good leadership, whereas the Shaido are apparently all from the top down a problem, and that means that there's a greater impact. Yeah, Sevanna's very paranoid. She's hearing people whispering. She thinks that the Shan-Chan definitely don't have lizards. They totally have lizards. Flying lizards are a thing. It's awesome.
Trying to figure out why Kadar, betrayed her, and like, is it Rand? Is it the Aes Sedai? What's going on with him? It's the Forsaken.
Yeah.
But she'll never figure that out.
That's way too big picture for her.
Some mentions of the weather, a lot more clouds than she'd ever seen. So we're getting some rain that's about to happen. This is foreshadowing the snow.
Yeah. Well, because they're near mountains, right? This is where the clouds are going to really start forming in that not transient way. Like, these are where the actual clouds of the weather really changing are going to form first. And we see the fact that the Jumai have a little bit, for some reason, they had more time to pack before leaving, it says here, and I don't know why. But they have their herds with them as a result. And they have a whole little city on the move.
Because she went through before all the gateways closed and cut people in half. She didn't see any of that.
Yeah, maybe they just got a little bit longer because she waited until some people had gone through before going through herself, just for whatever reason. But it says, given more time to prepare for their flight than the other septs. Why? How? I don't know how that could have happened. Unless she just knew that was going to happen and let her, camp administrators know or something like that.
Yeah, I have no idea. That's really throwing me off, because like they were all there with, unless Sevanna like warned them ahead of time, because that's her clan. And
that's the best I can think, is that she's like, I know we're going to be using magical means to get out of here today, so I'm going to let the appropriate people in the camp know. That's the only thing that makes sense. And it's super fucking bitchy and petty of her to not tell everyone else, to favor her own clan on something so simple. It would have cost her nothing to tell everyone else to prepare, to get ready.
Well, no, because her clan got all the flocks. Yeah.
She's so infuriating.
So she talks a lot about the town that they're in. Lots of tall, wooden, colorful buildings.
Because they have so much wood.
Because they have wood, they have trees.
As Pacific Northwesters, relatable, yes.
Yeah.
That is correct. You can build anything you want when you have trees.
And this one's father had called himself Lord of this palace and blustered that she and her people would be hunted down by children of all things. I assume he means the White Cloaks.
Oh, I never got that. I thought he meant his own kids, and I didn't see why she would think that was hilarious, but the children of the light.
The children of the light, I think, is what he was saying.
He's like, the children will get you. And she's like, but that is literally bullshit. So
right, I'm not afraid of children. What's the problem? Yeah, she just has totally ignorant of the White Cloaks and the name the Children of the Light.
Yeah, oh, I love it. I love the unreliable narrator. Even when it's on the nose, sometimes you can fucking miss it. Oh god, that's great. And Super Skylike says, well, the Shaido would mow down the White Cloaks too, so she had nothing to worry about there.
That's very
so
true.
accurate.
Yes. No, I mean, yeah. They're about as dangerous as children. I think that's why they're called the Children of the Light, because it's like, oh.
Aren't you cute with your, witch hunt bullshit? It's adorable.
So, here's the question. How many of these Aes Sedai fight for the Shan-Chan? Tian was saying. We must learn that. Samarin and Madara murmured agreement. I do not think it matters.
Real.
Put in. At least her contrariness extended to others too. I do not think they will fight unless we attack them. Remember, they did nothing until we moved against them, not even to defend themselves. And when they did,
Miara
said sourly, 23 of us died, and more than 10,000...
Okay, this is why.
...did not return either. So they're talking about Jumai's Wells, right?
Yep.
That puts numbers on the deaths at Jumai's Wells. 10,000. Oh god, this is why. Mm-hmm. I think we speculated about that before, but we do get a number on that.
Yeah, 23 wise ones and 10,000 spears.
And a lot of those wise ones were Rand himself from behind the scenes.
Well, that was the Aes Sedai that he was taking out. I mean, the wise ones died when the Ashaman...
I guess that's a good point. He was just the Aes Sedai he was taking out. Duh, yeah.
Yeah, he was focused. He didn't realize that the Shaido were there to have a fight with. He was so distracted.
So that must have been the Aes. Yeah, I guess that was mostly the battle with the Aes Sedai, because Ashaman didn't attack the wise ones. They just attacked the troops.
Right, yeah. They started at the dome, at the ring of trees, and they worked out from there.
Right. Okay, yeah, so I think she's totally right? We didn't, until we attacked the Aes Sedai, they didn't attack us.
The Aes Sedai, when did the Aes Sedai attack in the sequence of events? Because they marched right in with Perrin, right? Perrin gets pissed that the Aes Sedai are just coming in with him.
No, because remember, Perrin doesn't show up until the battle already starts.
Right.
The Shaido have... Sevanna betrays the Aes Sedai, surrounds them, and starts attacking. Yeah, and
they arrive at a fight already happening, and that is between the Aes Sedai and the Shaido. I always forget that Perrin's arrival is not the battle start. Because
no, it's not at all. Not at all. He's walking into our existing battle. So yeah, it does make sense that this does seem right. Like, yes, they surrounded a group of Aes Sedai and kind of got their asses kicked.
Yeah, well, I mean, wise ones don't partake in battle for a reason, and now the Shaido don't know what they're getting into. For sure. But yeah, I mean, they were forced to wait until the wise ones attacked. Well, no, until the Shaido attacked. They didn't have to wait for all the wise ones. They had to wait until the battle was right there in order to start attacking back.
After all this sort of internal bickering, one of the brotherless shows up and asks for judgment.
Yes.
Which immediately has the women presenting a unified front against him.
Yeah.
I don't entirely understand the issue and what judgment he's asking for here.
Okay, so first thing is this is Kinwyn, who I 99% sure is one of the protectors of Fail and friends. Pretty sure he's the one that takes care of Arella? No, Lucille.
Yes, so Roland, Jordan, and Cahun rescue Fail and the others. When Perrin sees Roland leading Fail, he attacks Roland and kills him with his hammer. Fail and Lucille stab Cahun and Jourdain in the back.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is the one where Lucille's really broken up over it because they had had a real relationship developing in all of that.
Yes.
So that's the first thing to note about this guy, is that we're going to see him again, and his death will matter to one of our very, very low tier characters.
But yeah, he's one of the brotherless. So we can see from the beginning that they're not happy with the Shaido. There's a reason they end up thinking about rebelling against them. You know, I think it would have been one option for Fail and her crew to get out of there if Perrin hadn't shown up.
Yeah. And the issue that they're bringing here is exactly that. This is why the brotherless are not sitting well with the Shaido, is because it's basically something to do with taking the spoils of battle and the relative populations. Like, well, if all of you get a vote, then you have, or if all of you get a stake, then you're going to take most of the stuff. That's how I've always interpreted this particular issue.
The Jumai say we may not take our full share from this place because we are not Jumai, but it is because they will have less since we are 2 for every Jumai.
I'll guide desist why.
The brotherless ask your judgment. So because they just have the Jumai and some of the brotherless, so that does tell us later they're equal, right? But right now the brotherless outnumber the Jumai 2-1.
Right. Yes, exactly. So the Shaido have a lot of their strength to build back up. And right now the brotherless have a little bit more potential power if push comes to shove. And yeah, they're going to take all the resources. But as Obscure and Sevanna are both saying, like, they can always die in place of Jumai. They are extra spears as the clan deals with being in a foreign land and dealing with unknown enemies. And looting and raiding. I mean, going a Viking is not exactly a risk-free career choice.
It reminds me a little bit of how Perrin sacrifices the Prophet's people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That is how Sevanna and all the Shaido see the brotherless. They don't see them as Aiel who were forced to make an impossible choice with their Jiito. They don't see fellow Aiel. They don't even really see human beings. They see this rabble, this mob, this issue to be dealt with. Because they don't have good leaders who see the humanity in others at all. Even to the point of, like, they're other Aiel. You're in the wetlands. You should all be having some solidarity. Like, the other clans agreed to that before heading over the Dragon Wall. Like, why are you so quick to renege on that kind of energy? What's up? Why are you like this? Do your leaders suck? Have they sucked for generations?
Yes, they have. So then we get... Is this Sevanna doing reverse psychology? They will give fair judgment, and I am certain they will speak in favor of the Meradine.
No, I think she's doing the thing where she tells them to do what they were going to do already. They were given fair judgment. So Sevanna thinks that fair judgment is for a certain thing to happen. I think that she's correct about that. I think what happens is that because she tries to influence them by making a comment, in order to get Kinwin's subtle, like, subconscious allegiance and loyalty, because she tried to do that, they drip some poison in his ear to go with that. To say, no, she didn't make this decision for you. She tried to manipulate it. They don't say which way she tried to manipulate it. They just say she tried to manipulate it. And I think that that's because they're afraid that she's doing what she's doing, which is trying to use tricks to gain authority. And they are like, no, she tried to influence the decision, and we are going to use that to undercut why she tried to influence the decision.
What she wants to be seen as someone who is influencing the decision in favor of the brotherless, so that they have support. Yeah,
and they don't take off and take away half of her spear strength, more than half at this point.
Gotcha.
Because, like, she's got animals, she's got children. Like, they need defenders. They need people who will stand at the front lines.
And then she says the sort of ending of her thought process is maybe the Oathrod will actually bind Randall Thor. Because if Kadar lied about the boxes not working, maybe he lied about the Oathrod not working on men.
Mm-hmm. Which is a fair assumption. The Forsaken lie. You should definitely take everything they say, like, with a big grain of salt.
But she doesn't know what he's lying about, and that was the truth.
Yeah, I do think it wouldn't work on men, but we definitely know that they were binding male and female criminals back in the Age of Legends. Like, absolutely, there must be Oathrods that work on men, even if... And maybe this would work on men. Maybe these Oathrods would work on men. We don't actually know.
That's actually a good question. Yeah, I kind of just assumed they were female Angreal only, but now that I think about it,
Like, does the person swearing the oath have to channel into the rod?
No.
And do they have to be a channeler to have an oath set?
I do think Saidar has to be channeled into the oath.
Right, so maybe an oath could set on a man, but it would still have to be, the woman would have to be wielding it. But, like, could a woman put an oath on a man with this rod?
It doesn't work on non-channelers, we're sure of that. But yeah, that's a really good question, because why wouldn't it work on men? You think if this was designed to bind criminals in the Age of Legends, you think it would work just as well on men as on women?
It seems like that would make more sense than making one specifically for men or women. It would make sense to have one that could apply to either, but maybe it takes, man or woman to control it, and maybe a man couldn't pick this one up and wield it to dispense an oath. I could see that. But I don't know of any specific evidence.
And we know that, know specifically that the collars that the Shanchan create, the Adom, would not work on a man.
Right.
And that's why there's the sad bracelets. So an involuntary ring is something completely different. But the volunteering of an oath on an oath rod with the magic binding, I don't see why they would separate them from male or female. Unless, and here's a theory, okay, we know there's 2 numbers on the 2 oath rods, 3 and 111. And we talk about 3 vertical marks in one place. Here, Galina says it's 111. I'm assuming it's a number. What if these rods came in pairs, and the odds were to bind women, and the evens were to bind men? So 1 and 2 came as a pair. 3 and 4 came as a pair.
I could see it.
111 and 112 came as a pair.
I could see it. Yeah. Because we have no idea how many of these they made. Or what the numbers mean.
At least 111.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, maybe they only made 2, and they both say 3 because Roman numerals were a thing in the Age of Legends.
And when you're introduced to it, you're like, oh, it's all about the 3 oaths. That's why there's the 3 on there. But then, and the other one has 3 marks, so it's still about the 3 oaths, but 3, maybe not. Maybe that's just a complete coincidence. I'd love to question Jordan about that and be like, what? Is there significance there, or did you just pick the number 3 and the number 111?
Yeah, why 111? Why that number? You could have used any number to indicate that there wasn't just this one kind of rod. Why that one?
And it does. And with 3 vertical marks, 3 vertical marks.
That is 3.
Yeah. It's still 3.
It's, wonderfully perplexing question.
And it was one thing if the first one had 1 mark on it and this one had 3 marks on it. It would be like, 1, 2, and 3. There might be 3 total of them out there, right? But the other one has the number 3 on it, and this one has, and so if we assume they're numbers, then this is the number 111. And if they're criminals, to me that makes sense, though. I think I've brought up this argument before, but you don't just have one jail in the U.S., right? Every city has its own jail, every state, maybe even every state, right? 111 states is not a crazy number of states to have across Randland.
Right, not in a global society, no.
Exactly. So why not every jail having its own binder?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Every jurisdiction, every courthouse, And I'm also, part of me has always thought what Dana Lou is saying in chat, that it's a nod to the age of Bilbo at his birthday.
111,
which is always where my mind goes. And I'm like, that's too deep a cut, isn't it?
Doesn't have to be.
It might not be. But it does imply a lot of interesting things about the world building that, maybe Notes of Jordan has answers, and maybe we just have to speculate and find out.
But then my counterpoint to that is, wasn't this supposed to be a peaceful society with no violence? Why would they need 111 binding rods, right? That's a lot of people that need to they're getting bound on a regular basis, right?
Maybe it was something from the collapse. The collapse was a century long. So maybe it's an artifact of that period, and they were just rising crime rates, and they had this new turn Grial.
I'm pretty sure these are described as Age of Legends.
Oh, because of what Semirog said.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's why they got to the 111th. Maybe they only had 3, and then they had to start cranking them out.
Okay, well, that's some fun speculation. I'd love to know if there's anything official out there about an oath rod being used on a man, because I kind of take Kadar at his word here, but that's such a terrible mistake to make.
Yeah.
That they don't. So.
Yeah. Open to speculation. The theories channel is open. And then the only thing I have left to say about Sevanna is that she still thinks she can get Rand and have all the power. And there's a really important line, actually, that I wanted to include with her. I have given up nothing, Sevanna replied irritably. The man, and more important, the power that came with him, would be hers someday, somehow, whatever it took. Sevanna in a nutshell. More importantly, the power that came with him. That is her entire purpose.
And it's why she wants to marry Rand.
It's why she does everything she does. It's why she wants Rand. It's why she will throw the entire clan into the meat grinder to get at him. It's because the power that comes with him will give her what she wants, which is basically to continue doing exactly what she's currently doing, but at a grander scale.
So you're saying she has delusions of being Grendel?
I would. Very, very accurate. Definitely a delusion of Grendel.
Do you trust Samael? Do you think he's lying? Because he was lying a lot to Sevanna during that conversation. Like, we know he was lying. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to take his word on anything that was said.
And he's not someone who will tell the truth for fun. He will lie because that's what he was doing already. Like, he's not, yeah.
And he had reason to tell her that, right? Because he didn't want her to try and use it on him and capture him. Mm-hmm. He wanted her dependent on him. Like, there's reasons for him to lie about that. However, I am of the opinion, my headcanon is they only work on women.
Yeah. I think I'm falling down on headcanon. They work on women and men.
Okay. Yeah, that's entirely fair.
Because I like that argument.
Mm-hmm. The evidence, I think, supports your headcanon, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like how easy it is. I feel like somebody would have used it on the Black Tower. Or on someone. I feel like it would have been a plot point. The Forsaken would have tried to use that on somebody. Because it is just way too convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of speculation that could go in any ways. Or maybe it's just that it was lost information. But yeah, no, but the Forsaken would have known, so they wouldn't have lost it. So yeah, it's either a property they didn't know about, which seems unlikely because they engineered them, or it's not a thing. So yeah, I think your argument's probably more supported by the canonical information.
And Little Jen saying she always thought 3 was the number of oaths they could swear, but we do see people swear a 4th oath.
Yeah.
Right? So, the 4th oath to obey from the group that's hunting the Black Aja. Right?
Yeah.
So
Elida speculates about making one. It's a thing. I feel like there's a thought from Galina where she says that everyone thinks that the number 3 is for the 3 oaths. Even within the White Tower, they don't actually know what the number means or what that's connected to, but it works for the 3 oaths, so nobody has really questioned it too hard.
I wonder if the reason there are 3 oaths is just an arbitrary coincidence that the oath rod they picked up happened to have the number 3 on it.
Right? Yeah, it totally could be. And they're like, Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics sounds like a good model.
I hear that book survived the breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not exactly the same, but yeah, there's some.
There's a bit of overlap, but yeah, not the same, because artificial intelligence isn't the same thing as universe-shaking power in a human mind. It's just, they're fundamentally different landscapes.
Although the make no weapon to hurt a man is definitely sort of like hurt no people.
Yeah, for sure.
The first law.
Yeah, because 3 is a good number, and morality tends to boil down to a couple of pretty basic tenets.
I mean, rule of 3, right? Like that. It's in comedy, it's in magic, it's in, like, every magic system I have has, like, 3 somewhere in
Well,
it.
it's probably because they're all deriving from the same, like, source material, but yeah, it's a number that shows up a lot.
Also, like, we live in a 3-dimensional universe, right? 3 points create the most stable structure. Triangles are...
Awesome.
Awesome.
And useful.
Like, useful. Anything you draw on a computer in 3-dimensional space is drawn with triangles. And it's amazing how universal triangles are in terms of our world and universality.
Yeah, it's really, really true. So, yeah. Are we ready to switch to Galina?
Yes.
Okay, well, I want a quick break.
I was going to say, well, I think I'm also slightly tortured with something in a bag, but it just happens to be my bladder rather than Galina. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick bathroom break, and then we will get into the Dark Friendesty of Dark Friends.
Yeah, people suck. Particularly people in Galina this section. Yes.
Yeah. That is actually a good segue. This is full of people who suck. Like, on the level of people who suck, like Galina, Therava, and Sevanna, how do you even rank them on who's worse?
It's a suck fest. Not in a fun way.
Galina's probably the worst person in this situation, if only because she's Black Aja and has clearly, like, actively killed and tortured lots and lots and lots of people.
She's on the Supreme Council of the Black Aja. Like, she's, like, not just following orders complicit. She's driving things in charge of what the Black Aja does. She's the worst. She has had the greatest impact, and the most amount of, like, human suffering has come about because of her. Though Galina and Sevanna and Therava are doing their best to catch up with this, explosion with the Shaido. They're trying really hard to catch up, but they have a ways to go, I think.
So, in terms of personality, I think Therava might be a worse person.
Yeah.
But in terms of effectiveness, I believe Galina has caused far more suffering overall.
And as an expression of how human beings can be the worst even without magic, Sevanna, much like Elida. She's the most relatable of the baddies, and that makes her the scariest. But yes, they each get their own separate category. You really can't rank them truly because they're all leaders in their own fields.
And so we come on Galina being tortured.
In a very awful way.
Yeah, and this is, so behind me is a paper bag in which is being cooked bacon and eggs over a open fire. Apparently that's possible.
That's a really terrible idea and a very weird picture.
I think it's a really bad idea, yeah. But I love the idea of Galina being the bacon and eggs cooked slowly in a leather sack.
I went for having just a beautiful picture of a nice bed of coals, nice and close up, glowing, hot, sizzling, very hellscapey. This is the sensation underneath her. And it's not good. It's very hot. It's a very hot fire.
And you must have to be relatively careful to not cause severe burns on the person and just heat them up. You think there's like a distance that they do? Because like that's how you cook food.
Well, she's not in water.
Right.
But yeah, I would think that there would probably be a distance at which that would stop being a long torture and start being a fast route to death.
And so I wonder if it's just, do they put it under there for a minute or two to heat her up and then pull it out? Or is it like just a really low? Anyway, I was thinking about the mechanics.
I was thinking about this too, and I was also perplexed at how this was not a way of killing someone very slowly. But yeah, maybe it's just that it actually hasn't been that long, and it's just because we're in her POV and time has completely slowed down because of the experience that she's in.
And if she's hanging from a rope, they slide the brazier underneath. So did I tell you that me and Patrick did an audiobook together, and when we went through the entire book and we recorded everything as all the braziers as braziers, and we had to get a note from the author to be like, could you go ahead and fix that on all those sentences? So we had to re-record all the sentences with brazier in it because we were both saying brazier the whole time.
Wow, I missed that story. That's amazing.
And like it was one of those things that the whole magic system was all about lighting herbs over fire. So that word was just constantly throughout the whole book. So fortunately, we caught it on like chapter 2. So we didn't have to record a lot of it. Yeah. Because we were sending her samples and stuff like that. But yeah, me and Patrick were both like, wow, we actually didn't know how that word was pronounced. And as I read recently, not knowing how a word is pronounced is a sign of pride because it means you learned it from reading.
Yeah, I was recently being reminded of how I utterly failed the pronunciation of Bechtel in Bechtel tests when I first came on the podcast. And someone commented that it was adorable. And yeah, I learned it from reading. That's how that happened. But now I know how to say it because I heard it on a podcast. Because podcasts are the new way of absorbing information. Everyone knows this.
And also, of course, the other thing that we didn't talk about is the itching powder that was.
Yeah, so that's
I guess it was just
part of why it's awful. Okay, so we should go through the why this is so. You said she's tortured. I said it's awful. We got off on a tangent. So basically, what's happening is Galina is in a sack and she's had hot chili pepper flakes, chili powder poured all over her, like really, really hot chili powder. And she's
mace.
Yeah. And so she's snugged up to the neck in a leather sack with her thumbs tied to her toes. So she's in this really like strange squatting position and is just having this burning, sweaty, powder, saturated oil covers just pouring over her naked body, and everything is on fire. And also there's literally fire underneath her, making her super hot. That's why she's sweating, right? Is because
absolutely.
There's this fire. There's a pan of coals just being held under her, probably 3, 4, 5 feet, whatever the correct distance is to make this not lethal, but very, very painful.
So here's my question. Why is Galina sweating? Can't she just Aes Sedai the heat?
No, she's too stressed. The whole situation for her at this point is she's just way too stressed to have that kind of serenity. And this is all, I mean, she was so frustrated that she struck a wise one. She doesn't know how long she's been here. She thinks it's been less than a month. She's pretty sure it's been less than a month. I think it's been like 2 weeks. Yeah, she's not broken, but she's well past the ability to have Aes Sedai serenity in the face of heat. And she thinks very violent thoughts about the wise ones throughout the chapter, starting here, about just killing everyone and making the streets run with blood. It's just kind of a thing with her because she's Black Aja and it has to be kind of cartoonishly evil in this moment of desperation.
It's interesting. We talk about how evil Therava is, but this is really Beldain's torture, right? That song is tough as an old ewe, Beldain crackled, but I always found even the toughest old ewe was made tender if cooked slowly with the right herbs. When I was a maiden, I softened stone dogs with enough cooking.
That's a good point.
This is not Therava. This is not Sevanna. This is Beldain.
This is one of those older women who actually do know how to torture. She's actually an expert torturer. She's got a little Inquisitor badge, so to speak. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the fact that, Beldain is actually their chief torturer character. It's like, I just do this. I've done this as a career path. It's cool.
And again, I don't have a lot on her. She's, after this one, the next thing I have is after the fall of Meldon, she, along with Therava, lead the Shaido back to the Threefold Land. So
Therava and Beldain are the starter culture for how that's going to go down. That's not going to end well. That's I feel bad for the Shaido who were just trying to get along and go with them.
Yeah, at some point it's like, you know what you signed up for. I guess it's the clan thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But like the brotherless run away. Why can't the Shaido?
Well, just for whatever reason, some of them are going to be that far removed from the seats of power and that far down the ranking that they're going to end up in too deep and all kill themselves Eredhall style. Like, I think they're basically going to pull an Eredhall with those two at the helm. And that's a bit of a shame, but also not, because the Shaido categorically suck. And Galina decides she's going to cook Belind in revenge, because we need rage vendetta imagery here. But Sevanna thinks that she's completely broken at this point. Therava knows better. Therava's like, nah, she's getting soft, but you need to give her to me. And because, Galina's still like sneering at how gaudy Sevanna is and thinking about revenge and all this stuff. Like, Sevanna could have just made a very lethal mistake and saved us all a lot of trouble. That would have helped, but no.
Because she does swear. She's, I will obey you, I swear it. And she's like, she's willing to do that until that gives her the opening she needs. You're not broken if you're still thinking about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And she hesitates when the Oathred gets brought into it. Right, Sevanna thinks she's going to be ready to swear on the Oathred, and she isn't until Therava gives her that other threat, and then her priorities change. But it's Therava showing up that pushes her over the edge. It's Therava wanting her that desperately that forces her to do so much to escape her specifically. She is very motivating just by, again, like Semirog, promise of pain. Therava has this promise of pain where you'll do whatever you can just when she wants you. She doesn't even have you yet, but that's enough to make you like completely change your priorities from 30 seconds ago.
And she does. She takes them very seriously. Therava and Somera were stronger than any woman in the tower, and any of them could have been Aes Sedai easily. That changes her mind. I think the fact that Therava is that powerful.
That does influence her deference and her fear, both.
Because that's their culture. The culture of the White Tower is you obey someone who's stronger. Also the Tower of the Black Aja, well, not necessarily the Black Aja, but certainly the Forsaken, right? That one's always one of the reasons that it seems weird that you have like a beggar who's higher than an Aes Sedai, because like just the raw inherent power of being Aes Sedai. There's
some stuff going on that we don't know about, and it's probably dark powers that we don't know about that, like, I don't know. But yeah, it's also, a basic animal dominance thing. Whoever's bigger than you is likely to intimidate you to a certain extent. Like, unless you have very strong cultural foundations that say otherwise, which she doesn't.
The matter was simple. The Meriden received the justice they deserved, and they were told they received it in spite of your attempt to sway us. And so, okay. So
mind games or political games. I'm learning. But yeah, I love how the Therava shows up, and then her and Sevanna both look at their respective guards and nod, and they all bail. All the maidens are like, we're fucking out of here. Like, wise ones are about to have a very serious showdown. We are skedaddling. Because this is a very important power struggle that's happening here. The matter of what to do with leadership and with the Aes Sedai are both two very, very politically important decisions for them to sort out.
Not that they're really going to have any influence over it. I mean, they pretty much just go to ground and then get wiped out.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want a broken Sevanna, let me have her. When I am done, she will obey without the need for your friend Kadar's toy.
I believe her.
Yeah, no, I absolutely believe her. And that's essentially what happens, right? That is... Mm-hmm. She uses the toy to help break her, but it's really the personality that does it. Galina hears about traveling boxes and wants them, even though, again, they don't work.
Yeah.
That was just Kadar channeling gateways and then tying them off and letting them fade randomly. Yep,
that's just bits of stone. Yep, totally meaningless. Not Terangriel. I love this line from her, because the oath rod ends up on the ground. Galina throws herself at it. Therava traps her hands under her foot. And this line, dimly she could recall making rulers pale with fear, but she did not dare disturb this woman's foot. How the mighty have fallen. It feels good, even though it is Therava. It's like, yeah, that's right. You're squirming in the dirt, afraid to move a woman's foot. That is how far down you are. Get it. Ugh.
Yeah, Galina is a great target for our hatred.
Yeah, very much so. She deserves all of the angst and fury. So then Therava and Sevanna basically negotiate. We're going to give her an extra oath so that she won't, kill us or run away or whatever. And we are both going to have equal stakes in complete control over her. So it's very much like they come to a perfect balance of power. Neither one of them has the advantage, but they've advanced the game a few steps forward. So it works.
To me, it sounds like Galina's about to be told two opposing orders and choked to death.
Well, that's a danger, yes. She's lucky that didn't happen. Air quoting. Lucky.
Because we see that when they're hunting the Black Tower in the White Aja with Pavara and that group, that they make one of the Black Sisters swear an oath to obey, but then they tell her to name her sisters, but she's also sworn an oath not to name her sisters. And so those oaths...
The choking thing happens because she gets told a contradiction. She has to say something that she is a lie. Because it's a ferret. It's not one of the Black Sisters. It's one of the ferrets that they catch while hunting the Black Aja.
But doesn't one of the Black Aja die from choking to death when they question her about...
No. The thing with Talene is that it's really hard for them to get her to admit it. With Adelius and Van Dien and Phaelane, they realize that she has oaths keeping her from betraying certain people. But no, the choking to death scene is the truth oath with one of the rebels from the tower that's snuck back in.
But she survives.
She survives, yes, because Pavara is a hard ass, but not willing to let her die. And Siain figures it out and is like, you have to release her from needing to speak an untruth because she can't speak an untruth. Like, she believes what she's saying. You can't force that. And Pavara releases her because Pavara's a good person underneath her hard ass crotchetiness. Yeah. She might be wrong, but she does, she believes it. So, but yeah, she survives. And no, nobody chokes on conflicting oaths. That would have happened, you'd think, though, in the course of 3,000 years of history or 2,000 years of history.
It maybe didn't get written down. Just because it happened doesn't mean they knew about it.
That's very, very true.
And a big part of why Galina swears this oath is because she knows the oaths can be removed.
Yes. She knows that there's a way out of this.
So question, do you think any oath can be removed by any oath rod? Or do you think the oath rod that placed it has to be used?
I'm really split on this one, but I'm inclined to think that it has to be with the rod that you used. I'm inclined that way, but it's a tough one.
I come down on the other side, that any oath rod can remove because they are duplications of the same Terangriel. I think the numbering is just to keep track of them. I don't think it influences what oaths are bound or unbound. I think once you're bound with an oath, it's like that's a thing that surrounds you, and the oath rod can take that off, and it doesn't matter which oath rod it came from. There's not like an identifier locked into it.
Yeah, I could see that.
But again, that's That's just my headcanon.
Yeah, no, that's why it's so hard because we just don't know what the number is. It would totally be like RJ to put the number there as a fucking barcode and make a big deal out of it when it's totally not a big deal. That would be very him to bait and switch us like that. And like, no, the numbers mean nothing. I just threw them out there to mess with you. Like, but maybe it tells us something important. We just don't know. I could flip a coin and convince myself either way. It's really...
Well, the complete lack of evidence either way.
We never see anyone attempt that, and that's a bummer.
or even anything like that. Like, I don't think we ever see a duplicate ter'angreal used to, like, remove a weave or something like that. But, like... it's sort of like the bowl of the winds, right? The effect is what it's acting on to me, right? Like the bowl, you can have multiple bowls of the winds and they would create a network, right? You can have multiple oath rods and I feel like they could both take and remove, the oath. Because the oath is an external thing it's acting on, not necessarily inherent to the oath rod itself.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
But at the same time, like, how hard would it be to just put a little extra key in there so someone who, like, oh, if you want to get out of your punishment, you have to come back to this location and convince us. You can't, like, go out there, you wouldn't want, like, some criminal organization to get hold of an oath rod and be able to remove all the oaths from everybody who swore.
Yeah.
So putting a lock on them would make sense if this is something that was used to punish criminals.
Yeah, which is, like, the entire reason they exist. So, fascinating question.
Like you said, I can flip a coin and convince myself, and there's arguments on both sides, for sure. And that binding, as she swears, and again, she swears because she thinks she can get it off eventually. But yeah, can you imagine that compression on skin that's already inflamed and hot?
I'm imagining, like, on a tattoo.
Yes. Yeah. Pouring a little salt in that wound.
Yeah, or just, like, wrapping it really tightly with a hot towel and just, like, reaming it down. Just like, no, owie. Ow. So yeah, that's not a good time. She fucking deserves it.
And then there's a bit of sort of forceful manipulation that Therava does, like shut your mouth. And
to
she
prove it,
can't not do it,
Then asks her to betray her worst revenge fantasies, which she does, and it's like, okay, if she'll say that to my face, then I know the oaths are working.
Well, they should have asked her a lot more questions. Like,
there's so many questions.
Yeah, there's so many questions.
Which is why Therava, for all that she stands up to Sevanna, is not really a good... it's not an intelligent person or a good leader, because she doesn't think to do anything with Galina other than win points on Sevanna. And satisfying whatever, like, weird, like, pseudo-sexual power move lust thing is going on there. She could be doing so much for her people and turning things around and leading them to the last battle with honor. And no, she's just going to play games.
Therava takes the oath rod back from Galina. And it says, it seems you will wear white after all, Galina. For some reason, she gave a pleased smile at that. That's what makes me think that she wanted her in white all the time.
Yeah, which again, Therava's the one that put her in black. Yeah.
No, this is the opposite,
Therava,
right?
Therava is the one who put her in black, right?
This seems to imply the opposite, that Therava's happy she's back in white.
Oh, shit. This isn't Sevanna speaking. This is Therava speaking.
No, this is
I
Therava
should probably
speaking.
get that straight before I make assertions. Uh-huh.
Who's talking?
Yeah, I totally was assuming that was Sevanna talking, so...
Right, but that's why I think that it was really Sevanna who put her in black, because Galina's happy that she's back in white.
Or maybe she just wanted her in black temporarily.
Hold on, I'm just going to look this up. This is ridiculous. Sevanna makes her dot song. Therava is not happy about it.
Okay. Well...
So...
we can cut that entire argument down to very little then.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. The entire time is that, yes, Therava wanted her as Guy Shine, as a servant, and Sevanna wanted her as dot song to break her.
Sevanna ultimately wanted to do something with her, so she probably couldn't keep her dot song forever, ultimately. But this was under Therava's control, which means that Therava wins the argument, the battle. She wins this battle.
Yes, but she lost the previous one.
Right.
The one to make her dot song. So she wins by bringing her back into Guy Shine.
Mm-hmm. And then Sevanna gets a much bigger blow than the loss of Galina as dot song.
The loss of the oath rod.
Well, and that also. But then what I was thinking was there have been meetings among the wise ones. We have reached certain decisions.
Yeah. I will advise you. You will listen to my advice, Therava says to Sevanna.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically results in her saying we have to move, and Savanna's like, okay, but I'm not moving the direction you said.
Yeah, it's a negotiation. And probably Therava saw that coming and actually wanted to move east, and so picked north because it was the second best option.
Seriously, I go with Therava. I think they'd be better off in the mountains.
Actually, that's true.
They would be protected. Yeah, I think she legitimately thinks they would be better off holding up in the mountains and just trying to gather themselves before they go out and take over the world. Whereas Savanna's like, no, we got enough. Let's just start, and people will flock to us in the meantime.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you're right. Therava is definitely feeling outflanked and wanting to hide and hold up and lick their wounds and do all of that kind of stuff. She wants to go to ground. She doesn't want to go marching into more battle.
And gather the rest of the clan. They don't have the Shaido with them. Like, fix that before you decide to take over the world.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, take care of your people before being a global imperial power concept.
Yeah, we don't do that here. But this decision is what leads them to Perrin.
Yes, because Sevanna picks east. That is the fateful moment that puts her on a collision course with Perrin and company. And then Therava threatens Sevanna, and Sevanna just straight up threatens her back. Do we have any idea what those plans are?
Remember, Therava, all of you, I am left for the vultures, so will you be. I have made assurances of that. I assume that's the murder of Desane is basically like, you will all go down with me. If I die, there's enough people know about the murder that will come out. You will be accused of the murder of Desane.
You think that's it?
That's how she bound. Mm-hmm. I think that's entirely the threat.
I don't think so. She keeps that knowledge too deeply under lock. She doesn't want anyone to know about what happened with Desane. That knowledge is supposed to be extremely tight in. Like, who could she trust?
But she's blackmailing them, is what she's saying. Is like, if you take out me, I will... your secret will be revealed. She might be lying about having a method. I don't know. Savanna's... But that's one of those things where, like, you can give a sealed envelope to an assistant and say, if I die, this, open this and have it come out, right?
Okay.
There's steps.
Okay.
We don't know what steps she would have taken, but my assumption is if she gets exposed or if she gets killed, the Wise One's secret will be out.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, she's got people like Fallon who have been following her for a long time. So, yeah, I can see it.
And she talks about using the stick against them versus the carrot. And like, here, this is the stick. This is her basically threatening. That's her only stick. That's her only leverage over these people.
Very, very tense interaction when stuff like that is being said and there's no weapons, there's no hand-to-hand combat. It's just words and information, but it's so intense. I understand if they cut this plotline out, but I want this kind of tension in the show. I want this level of tension, this kind of conversation, because it's really good Jordan character molding, and I really want to see that.
I want the politics to be good. And when I say the politics, it's this sort of thing. It's fighting with words. It's like having an advantage. Because I find it so fascinating and in a lot of ways very foreign to me. Like, I don't know how to do that in my real life. Like, I'm so honest, and I don't know how to hide things, and I don't know how to turn
lying is way too much work. Cannot.
Yeah,
the
it's
truth
way
is
too much work.
I'm lazy. I need the truth.
Yeah. So this sort of thing has always fascinated me, because I'm like, how do they even do that? How do you even steer a conversation well enough to pull power out of it? Like, the art of verbal sparring is just fascinating to me. And I get that, as an author, you get to write both sides of the conversation, so there's something to that.
It's wonderfully interesting to watch, because it makes no sense on a personal level. I cannot relate. But it's really fun to watch.
And that's where I feel like politics falls down, when you feel like things happen just because they need to, rather than the person says the right thing to the right person or arranges things to happen, right? Like, this is really good politics, because everyone is acting in their own self-interest, and then there are consequences to that, and things fall out. Whereas I think really bad politics is... Well, I mean, Jordan doesn't write really bad politics, in my opinion. Like,
the closest to it is maybe Rand and Perrin just kind of like decreeing shit randomly and then people making it happen. But that's not really bad. It's Ta'Veren. It's
also, we have Tom and Moraine working in the background for a lot of that to make those things happen.
Or Fael. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what bad politics would look like, I think, because, Jordan doesn't write it.
But look, there's some other authors that... I feel like Raymond Feist gets into that era quite a bit. I don't know how much Feist you've read.
I've read like the first book.
There's a part of his... Some of his later stuff gets much more political, especially with the Empire across the sea, or in the other reality. And it's not well written. Things just sort of happen because they need to sometimes. So I don't find his politics as good as Jordan's by a long shot. So, for examples of inferior politics where I'm not as convinced that everyone's working in their own self-interest, right? That there's this sort of hitch where everyone's working in their own self-interest, and then there's just a decision that gets made where everyone sort of falls in line, and you're like, I don't feel that everyone was convinced to do that. Like, just because he stood up there and had a speech, right? It seems like the people would just go back to doing what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unlike with, like, Egwene in the White Tower, right? And her whole, like, political power of, like, yeah, you declared war, so now I get to say what happens. Like, that makes so much sense. The politicalness of it and the way she manipulates is so good. So good. And then, because, again, everyone's acting in their own self-interest, but still, she corners them. Because they don't realize what they've actually done. Look like you're shooting at one goal when actually you're shooting at a goal slightly beyond it.
Yeah, it's stuff that I don't get much at all, but by attempting to analyze it through the lens of podcasting through it, it's coming a little more into resolution, and I'm enjoying it. For my level of likelihood of doing anything with the information, I think it's probably a pretty safe bet. But, if I were to say become a dictator, then basing my entire worldview and military strategy off of Wheel of Time might be a little cattywampus. But I could become like a really famous historical bad guy in the process.
I gotta be wonder about that. Like, there's gotta be worse paradigms for taking over the world than the Wheel of Time.
You would think so? Yeah. Like random books that yep. Anyway, long tangent. Not going there. But yeah, I think Wheel of Time is a pretty complete worldview, and we should force it on everyone. This is the goal of our cult.
Welcome to the cult. So the next thing I have is the snow.
Yes.
So we've got flurries. They're not even touching the ground. They're barely even reaching the treetops. It's sort of the lightest of light snows. And now, obviously, Galina Gast had the Great Lord loosen his grip on the world for some reason. We know she's a dark friend, but that's just another, like... She understands the implication. She's the highest of the Black Aja. She's high rank. She understands what the weather is, that is something the Dark One is doing, and that snow means somehow that grip has been loosened. And he won't be happy about it.
No, he will not. I love Therava's reaction. It's so funny. She's like, literally, this is not a problem. And it's like, oh, you sweet summer child.
This is not all of snow. Wait till it accumulates. You just don't know.
Like, I always thought hundreds and hundreds of men who went to fight a war in the snow were lying about what snow was like. Like, really? Are you really that arrogant? You thought they were all lying? Like, come on. Yes. Come on. Like, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, like a quarter of an inch of snow shuts everything down. And I know that snow is a problem. Oy. But yeah, it's cool to have this vision of the snow falling and sublimating basically as it hits the air and the ground right near them, just like going straight into the dryness of the warm air at the ground.
I love the idea that this is a reference. This is a reference to the blood snow, right? Rand's birth.
Yeah, that's definitely what she's talking about.
Galina in her head, I'm the highest of the red, she reminded herself. I sit on the Supreme Council of the Black Aja.
They sounded like lies.
Not anymore.
That wasn't fair! It's like, I'm sorry, does it not fair that you, as the head of the Black Aja, are in trouble? Like, shut the fuck up. You have made so many people's lives miserable. Not fair. Like, you work for the fucking avatar of entropy and chaos. Fairness is not something you get.
Yeah. This is beyond, like, I'll be rescued by the Black, I'll be rescued by the White Tower. No,
nobody cares about you. Nobody wants you.
Which just tells you, like, if she was actually powerful, if she was actually significant, and people would come after her, right? But she's not. She's a replaceable cog. This is the difference between Egwene and Galina. Like, when Egwene is taken, people go after her. People want her back. It's only her command is the only thing that keeps her from being rescued. Fail, Perrin wants her back.
Rand, people want him back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in fairness, Galina doesn't compare to any of those on any scale, but...
No, but as the leader of, like, one of the most important Black sisters and the leader of the Red, you think somebody would try and get her back.
But no.
You know, I think she'd have some alliances, but no, she's just that terrible of a person.
Well, everything about the Black Lodge is terrible. It's all about betrayal. It's all about self-interest. It's all about selfishness. Like, this is how it shows, is that the second she's in trouble, she gets to stay there. Nobody's coming for her. And she wants to explain about snowfall and all the bad things about snow, and then clamps her teeth shut because she's like, no, just because Therava's here doesn't mean I have to curry favor, right? The oath doesn't make her be forthcoming. It only makes her tell the truth.
But that's what she wants to do, and it's only a matter of time before that want becomes a need, and that's when she becomes broken, when she has to please Therava.
Yep.
That's her only. And that's what we see with the Soldan and the Damane, is the Damane have to please the Soldan. That's their only reward. They get the little candy. I mean, it's very Pavlovian response there.
It's conditioning. It's brainwashing conditioning.
And we saw it working on Egwene.
Yeah, it works on Teslin, right? Teslin starts to freak out because it's working on her, and she's afraid she won't get rescued in time, just like Egwene.
And who's the one who breaks and is left behind?
Pura. I forget what her Aes Sedai name was. She does have a whole backstory. She shows up a couple of times prior. I think she's in New Spring, but I forget her name, and I'm sorry.
If we are done here, Sevanna said, I will take the guy Shine back to our great roof and see her put in white. You can remain and stare at the snow if you wish. Her tone was so smooth, like butter in the tub, that no one would have thought her at dagger's points only moments earlier. She looped her shawl over her elbows and adjusted some of her necklaces. Nothing in the world concerning her more. We will take care of the guy Shine, Therava told her just as smoothly. Since you speak as the chief, you have a long day and most of the night ahead of you if we are to move tomorrow. For an instant, Sevanna's eyes flashed again, but Therava merely snapped her fingers and gestured sharply at Galina before turning to go. Come with me, she said, and stop pouting. Head down, Galina scrambled to her feet and scurried after Therava and the other woman who could channel. Pouting? She might have been scowling, but never pouting. Her thoughts scrambled like rats in a cage, finding no hope of escape. There had to be one. There had to be. One thought that surfaced in the middle of that turmoil almost made her begin weeping again. Were Guy Shine robes softer than the scratchy black wool she had been forced to wear so far? There had to be a way out. A hasty glance back through the trees showed Sevanna still standing there, glaring after them. Overhead, the clouds swirled, and the falling snow melted like Galina's hopes.
Get what you deserve.
Get fucked.
Yeah. Chat, Nicholas is saying the name is Rima. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
That's right.
Yeah. So Rima is the Aes Sedai.
And it's so funny because the whole point of that chapter is Egwene being like, I will remember her name. I will not forget it. And me and you are like, wait, what was her name?
Because RJ gave us the name Pura first. That's the first name that she hits our consciousness with. Like, RJ did that very, very deliberately. Okay, Rima is Pura. Mylan is Shireen. Okay, thank you.
And they're both Aes Sedai. They're both broken.
Yeah. Those are ones that actually get fully taken into the Shan Shan way of thinking and brainwashing and all of that awfulness.
And that's another one of those Shireen, Sareen names that Jordan throws at us with the Aes Sedai, so that's also why that Mylan Sharian is hard.
It's one of the reasons why the podcast exists, is to make this content, have these conversations where the Aes Sedai ultimately get sorted out, and in the edited version, everything is accurate.
The edited version. Thank you for yes.
That is part of the appeal of the podcast, I think. It's definitely part of the description I've put into like Patreon and stuff, is like, you don't have to memorize the Aes Sedai, we'll do that for you. And then we turn to chat and outsource it to them because we're getting practiced at this at episode 399.
So like it's funny, we do a lot of research ahead of time, but man, we also do a lot of research.
Yeah, the episode where I got taken out from you and Kayla talking, because yes, the storm did take my power out 10 minutes into that recording. You two made a complete and utter error, and I had to actually insert in editing a radio being like, no, it's wrong.
Oh, which one was it?
Which of the white cloaks didn't ever lie? You said it was Valda. You were wrong. It's Asunala. He's the one that's scrupulously truthful. Valda lies, like, whatever. And you two went through this whole thing where you figured it out, and I was just like, I can't let this stand. Like, I have the power to insert myself here. Like, no.
Did you cut it down at all?
No, definitely. I mean, I cut it down to something coherent, but yeah, to just insert myself and be like, no! I might be 5 days in the future, but...
I wish I had more music skill, because I wish I could comment more on the Wheel of Time music that's coming out.
I haven't listened to any of it yet, but I'm going to at some point, and I'm going to be pushing it on my dad in particular, because he listens to music like nobody else. He has such an ear for music and has such wild taste, and he hates on-screen violence. So he will not watch the show. There's absolutely no way he's going to watch the show. But we might be able to connect over the soundtrack. He was very intrigued when I told him about what I've heard from my music friends, but I personally, I'll get to it eventually. There's so much content. It'll be there when I have energy.
And that's something that, too, when you get the full soundtrack out, you can actually, like, consume the whole thing, share it with your dad, pass it on. Like, that can be a little more of a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this TV show.
Oh, my God.
Like,
No, I can't stop talking about it to everyone I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I was talking to my grandma today, and it's just, this is the final 10 days before the show. This is the last time we have to live in a world without the show.
And it looks good. I'm like, I wish someone would just fucking say that. Like, it looks really good.
It looks
like,
so good.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, I can go into detail, I can go into, what I think, but I think they are doing the right thing. They are recreating the feel of the books without recreating all the details of the books. Things are giving me chills. The special effects are there. The characters are there. The actors are there. The runtime is there. The
enthusiasm from non-readers.
The enthusiasm. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. People I've shown the preview to who, I've taught their ears off about the books, and I show them this preview, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that looks fun. I could definitely watch that. That looks really good."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, people are actually excited about this.
I'm so stoked. Everything I've seen just makes me more and more excited. Like, I don't have blind faith. I have informed enthusiasm. I'm so fucking stoked. This is just, oh my God. I'm so excited. It looks so good.
Did you see the quote today about the fact that they're turning their head on nudity, and it's mostly male nudity in the first season?
Yeah, I did. And I'm like, little fucking equality sometimes means overcorrecting the other direction and fucking loving it. And I'm super here for it. This is great. Let's really change the game and really cut down on the Game of Thrones comparisons.
Please.
That will neuter so much of that conversation if it's like, no, the women keep their clothes on for the most part.
The Game of Thrones bros will be very much turned off the first time you see naked ass.
Oh, God. I am so excited for them to leave
Male
the
ass.
Fandom so that we don't have to deal with them anymore. And it can just be the cool people.
They're not going anywhere. They thrive on it. They thrive on it. They're leashes. They'll be here.
I ignore the fact that they exist. I do not deal with them. I do not go into spaces where I will have to deal with them. And that circles back to why we're going to lock the attitude of this server fucking down.
All right. Okay. So, example. Someone told me a great pun at work yesterday. It was, and I'll tell it. It wasn't Wheel of Time related, but I'll tell the Wheel of Time version that I made, which was Elaine was informed that she had to take a bath in goat's milk for her health and the baby, and so she decides to do that. And as the goat herd is filling up the bathtub, Birgit is obviously watching over that, and she says, very concerned about the safety, "Is that milk pasteurized?" And he goes, "Well, no, ma'am. It's only up to her neck." Great pun, right? The version he told me was, "It's only up to her tits."
Ah.
And I was like, that's completely irrelevant to the fucking joke. Why do you have to mention tits? What's the point?
This is a little casual objectification and misogyny. It's
Exactly,
fine.
exactly. So it's just,
Yeah.
You can tell the joke without the casual misogyny.
Yeah, it costs nothing. It's not hard, and it's really fucking funny. Like, that's a fine joke. I mean, as much as I hate, stupid puns, but that's a whole different thing.
Right, yeah. As a category, in that category of joke, it is a good example of that joke.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so, I was there, I was with him, I was laughing, and I was
And no.
and done. And it's just I take that out, and it's still good. Okay.
Yeah.
So probably by the time this comes out, I will be in Seattle. Probably actually right after this comes out, or before this comes out, I will be in Seattle for November 15th to see the first 2 episodes of The Wheel of Time. I hope I make it into the theater. I bought tickets, but the tickets are free, and, it's first come, first serve. So, but in less than a week, I'm hoping to have seen episode 1 and 2. Myself, Travis, and Never are heading up to... It's only about a 3-hour drive for us, so it's totally worth it.
Fuck yeah.
I guess... Am I wearing my water cloak? I guess I'm wearing my water cloak.
Yeah, I think you definitely are. Oh my god, and you'll die of heat exhaustion, but it'll be worth it.
Not necessarily. It's getting pretty chilly
Well,
up
I mean,
here.
in the theater, you're going to have to deal with it somehow, in a room full of people. It's going to be warm.
Frankly, it's a comfy blanket.
Yeah. And people put off heat, so.
Yeah.
So I'm not going because it would be a 5-hour drive for me, and it's not worth it for the potential of being turned away to have 10 hours of driving for nothing. I am going to go see Dune in a theater that I rented out for private showing tomorrow, and I will get to see the trailer on the big screen.
Nice.
Very, very excited about that. But I'm super, super glad that you and Travis and Never are going to make a stab for it. So basically what I'm hearing is you need to leave Thursday as soon as we're done recording. You need to head up there and camp out in line.
They won't let you line up before 3 p.m.
Oh, that's going to be a fucking bloodbath.
So we're trying to arrive at 3 p.m. Or before, slightly before 3 p.m. Because, and I actually am working that morning. So normally I get up and I get to work at 10 and work from 10 to 2 or 3. And instead I'm going to be I'm like, all right, let's keep the prep list short that day, please.
Just make it easy on me.
Just make it easy. And so my boss was like, absolutely. So I'll go in and work an early morning shift and then take off around slightly before noon.
Nice.
And hopefully we'll get there plenty of time. So probably by the time this comes out, I will be in Seattle. Probably actually right after this comes out, or before this comes out, I will be in Seattle for November 15th to see the first 2 episodes of The Wheel of Time. I hope I make it into the theater. I bought tickets, but the tickets are free, and, it's first come, first serve. So, but in less than a week, I'm hoping to have seen episode 1 and 2. Myself, Travis, and Never are heading up to... It's only about a 3-hour drive for us, so it's totally worth it.
Fuck yeah.
I guess... Am I wearing my water cloak? I guess I'm wearing my water cloak.
Yeah, I think you definitely are. Oh my god, and you'll die of heat exhaustion, but it'll be worth it.
Not necessarily. It's getting pretty chilly
well,
up
I mean,
here.
in the theater, you're going to have to deal with it somehow, in a room full of people. It's going to be warm.
Frankly, it's a comfy blanket.
Yeah. And people put off heat, so.
Yeah.
So I'm not going because it would be a 5-hour drive for me, and it's not worth it for the potential of being turned away to have 10 hours of driving for nothing. I am going to go see Dune in a theater that I rented out for private showing tomorrow, and I will get to see the trailer on the big screen.
Nice.
Very, very excited about that. But I'm super, super glad that you and Travis and Never are going to make a stab for it. So basically what I'm hearing is you need to leave Thursday as soon as we're done recording. You need to head up there and camp out in line.
They won't let you line up before 3 p.m.
Oh, that's going to be a fucking bloodbath.
So we're trying to arrive at 3 p.m. Or before, slightly before 3 p.m. Because, and I actually am working that morning. So normally I get up and I get to work at 10 and work from 10 to 2 or 3. And instead I'm going to be I'm like, all right, Let's keep the prep list short that day, please.
Just make it easy on me.
Just make it easy. And so my boss was like, absolutely. So I'll go in and work an early morning shift and then take off around slightly before noon.
Nice.
And hopefully we'll get there plenty of time.
Which, by the way, those new shots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited.
I do want to ask about looks like an Aiel is killing without being veiled.
Yeah. I have only caught to the fact that was happening for days or a day. Because apparently it makes a lot of sense from a filmmaking perspective. Mm-hmm. Actors live by their face. So to have your face covered is a real problem for an actor's thing. And so much like the rings and the color-coded Aes Sedai dresses, it's a change that I do not like, but completely understand from a production perspective, and I'm willing to just roll with. It's okay. It's a big part of the world building, and it doesn't work for TV.
Right.
It is what it is. Deal with it. It's fine. Let's not let that ruin our sense of the show.
Same thing with the ageless. I don't think I've heard anyone complaining about the lack of an ageless face on the Aes Sedai, right? Because it's just it's impractical with CGI. We don't even know what that means. Just pick a lot of women who look like they are, middle-aged and could be much older.
And then do
younger,
their makeup and hair accordingly to make them look incongruous, and you're good to go.
Right. You're good to go. So it very much is a supernatural thing in the Wheel of Time that if you look at somebody and you know the look, you can immediately pick up on them being Aes Sedai. But I think of that in the same way that, if you know what plastic surgery looks like, you can pretty much very quickly pick up on someone having had plastic surgery. But if you're not, and it helps if you have a bunch of people together who've had plastic surgery, you're like, oh, you all have the same non-expression. Mm-hmm. But I can see how in the wild, if that's something you've never seen before, and you see someone with plastic surgery, you just be like, they look normal, just weirdly ageless somehow, and so to me, the whole tightening of the binding that literally tightens your skin is as close to a plastic surgery. And I do think if you look at pictures of people who have had plastic surgery and you can identify it, you would be able to identify the ageless look in a similar way. Does that make sense? Totally.
And it makes sense that it's something that just doesn't translate well from a book where the rules are completely open to screen.
No.
It makes no sense to bitch about that. And I haven't heard any bitching about that because even the trolliest trolls realize that that's just ridiculous.
But I can also see that, if you have large groups of Aes Sedai warriors, you'd want the masks because it's much easier to CGI that. You'd want the veils.
Yeah. So we're going to have maybe, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would look amazing for the whole warrior things. And maybe they veil for part of battle. Just not all of it. Mm-hmm. Maybe they veil for battle and only unveil when it's time to actually take a life or something like that.
Or maybe she just got caught by surprise and attacked.
Maybe it gets torn off her face in the fight.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Over you.
Yeah. So it's just, this is definitely a tangent, but we're speculating. We don't have enough context to know or complain.
No. And I'm perfectly happy with how completely badass it looked. I'm so excited that we get to see the blood snow.
The blood snow. Frankly, because I think the guy she was stabbing was the head of the companions.
Oh, yeah, with the 9 Bs right there on his chest.
The 9 Bs. What it really was, the 4 rings on his arm. Mm. Because the rings on the arm connotate rank in the Ileana companions, and the only person with 4 rings is the head.
Oh, so God, I love the details.
Yeah, exactly. And that's true to the books, right? And Tam, as his second, would only have 3 rings on his arm.
Oh, man.
So that does appear to be Tam's superior officer being sent.
See, this is why I'm fucking excited. All the details, even the details. Yeah. I have never learned that detail of the armoring at all. But the people building the show went through all that effort. Yes, sure, I can bow down to them and respect what they're making and be very fucking excited without having actually seen it yet.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?